once your background is dry, then you're going to sketch your church on top of it. So you can kind of see what I've done. The best way to sketch out a church is to decide how wide you want it and then create a line of symmetry down the middle. That line of symmetry I kind of erased a little bit, but I didn't erase it completely because I'm just going to paint over it. But that line of symmetry will help you make the angle of your rooftop look a little bit more symmetrical. Now, if you do not have a symmetrical church, then you can still add on to it on one side, and that would be the opposite of symmetrical, it would be asymmetrical. Neither is better, it's just your preference. So then you're going to start painting. Now when it's time to paint, I'll pull up my inspiration photo, which I have, so if you need your photo reference beside you, then that's fine. I'm going to use a brush, and my church is mostly white. When you paint, please let some of the music show through, just like you did for the background, okay? So I still can see some of the music notes and the words. So you're kind of, it's like a messy painting, guys. If you'd rather use your palette knife to do this, it's a little tricky, but it is possible because this is how the project was last year. But if you want to, and I'm showing a little bit of the blue, like I didn't fill that in all the way right there. Now's your chance to be a little messy. And that's actually a good style that we're going for this. But if you'd rather use your palette knife, you kind of have to get in there with either the shorter end, this is a shorter end, or there's a wider end here, and you have to decide which one will fit in that section. So this little shorter end right here, you kind of scoop it up like you're about to put some peanut butter on some bread, and so you just spread it all the way on like this. And you just kind of have a 45-degree angle, which means it's not like sitting up this way, but it's kind of laying more flat, and it's laying down the paint without taking it off at the same times. If you have your angle kind of more upward like this, then you're going to be pulling the paint off as you're putting it on, and that's not the look you're going for. And you just kind of keep going this way, okay? When you're finished painting your church, you might want to add some stained glass windows. Try to mix white with the colors that you're using because it makes them a little bit lighter. It looks like light is reflecting through. You can use a palette knife or you can use a brush. It's up to you. And you're just going to tap color in. And just kind of, if you want to add a few colors, I'm going to do blue and yellow. Just kind of leave some spaces. And I'm going to do all the yellow first. And then I'm going to add my blue in there in between. So I'm not necessarily putting the blue right on top. I am just literally putting it in between the spaces. This blue is a little too dark. I'm going to go pastel and get some more white in there. So that's perfect. And then just tap it in, and then you've got kind of like this speckled glass look. After you're finished with your door and your steeple, you can see I've added some color to the top. For the steeple, it's more of like a brownish black with a little bit of gray in there. And then my door, then you can start your background. And I just realized that I have another window up here to add. When you're adding your background, if you want green to be like your grass, don't always mix white with green. It tends to make it look more like a mint green. Yellow is actually a good color. You can go with this golden yellow. Kind of gives it more of a grass green color, or just even a lighter yellow. But you don't want to use green directly from the bottle of paint because it's not an exciting green. None of those will look like grass. So you're just going to use a palette knife for your grass or your path or your background. And you can go side to side or up and down. Actually, I tend to go up and down because that's going to give me the texture of grass. And you just kind of bring it downward because grass points upward. The last thing you'll do to your church is mix up a brown with a little black and a little white. So it's kind of like a grayish brown. And then you're going to get an even amount of paint. So you just kind of stamp in. You can see that this palette has a long line and a short line. So you're going to need both. So I'm going to do the long line first and just kind of, you might want to test it out a little bit on your palette to see how it looks. And if it's not exactly straight, that's not a bad thing, but you don't want it to be like really globby. That's perfect. And so then you're just going to stamp the outline edges, and notice that the outline edges are not a solid line. It's almost like a broken line, and that is your goal. That is what you are aiming for. Do not go back and just make that line look perfect, because then you might as well just use a paintbrush, and stamping it kind of gives it the impression look. Now your rooftop, yes, that needs to be a thicker line, and you will go back and add more paint on that. That makes it stand out a little bit differently than these lines on the side. So here I go, I'm gonna go back on top and add a thicker line. And now that looks way more like a rooftop, and it stands out, and there's a difference between the side and the roof. Imagine this line with just pure black paint. I don't think it would look as nice. Just adding a lot of brown and some gray to it, which is just white with black. Really does give it more of an antique look, and it doesn't take away from the painting like black would. The little lines, you're gonna have to like add a lot of paint and just kind of inch your way around. And that's okay. Give the impression of a circle and just kind of, or maybe even just try to paint with the palette knife and not exactly stamp it. It's almost like you're drawing. But be careful, I almost put a glob right there in the middle because I scooped up too much paint. So it's definitely something you want to wait till the end until you get the feel for this palette knife before you just start trying to paint a circle with it, because that's the hardest task. And it's not perfect, but that's what makes it look really nice and rustic. The last thing you can do when you're ready to finish it out with some rustic look in the sky is you get a little bit of palette knife on the edge of your knife, and then you can actually create some rustic, like old looking lines, and that kind of adds to the look. And you want it to be speckled, not streaked. Streaked means that you would have a big line of it. You want it to have more of just spots rather than lines. So just kind of get the edge like that. That's it. Don't add too much because you don't really need a lot to take away from the painting. The last thing I'm going to add are cotton pieces, and if you want to add flowers, then you just kind of take a palette knife like this and you just kind of push in the color. And I'm going to do some palette knife painting of cotton pieces. So I'm going to start off big with flowers. You can do the same. It's the same idea, just with different colors. This could even be flowers here. Start off big, close up, and then they get smaller as they go further away. And that creates a little bit of perspective to make it look more realistic. You can spread them out, or you can cluster them really close together, give a variety of sizes and shapes